We must transport the captain and the others from the constellation and escape this thing's subspace interference in order to warn Starfleet Command.
Mr. Spock.
I suspect most academics feel some form of kinship with Star Trek's iconic Mr. Spock, calmly and logically following the science. The experience of the COVID panic, however, revealed this belief to be little more than self-flattery, as most behaved like beings from another science fiction classic, namely the Apes from 2001, A Space Odyssey. This reality of man's true nature was experienced by anyone who challenged the master narrative of the COVID regime, but no one likely more than Stanford's Scott Atlas. Why this is and why the majority of public health acted as they did is the subject of this video. Scott Atlas was a well-respected medical doctor and health policy analyst who plied his trade at Stanford's Hoover Institution. When Western governments around the world began to follow China's lead with such previously unheard-of policies such as universal masking, social distancing and lockdowns, he was one of the few who spoke out. He publicly advocated for the scientifically based light touch of D.A. Henderson, with a focus on protecting the vulnerable while letting society function normally. Against the mob, he correctly argued that true public health is a holistic endeavor and that solely focusing on the single variable of COVID cases was folly. Perhaps without realizing it, he was advocating for the wisdom of Chesterton's fence. He knew there was value in a child's maskless smile as well. Spock-like, Atlas questioned the dominant COVID narrative with facts and logic. For doing so, he was viciously attacked by the COVID regime with all the subtlety of jawbone-wielding apes. Noted public health expert Bill Gates derided him as this Stanford guy with no background promoting crackpot theories. Nearly 100 members of Stanford's faculty signed a letter denouncing his falsehoods and misrepresentations of science. The Stanford Faculty Senate overwhelmingly voted to condemn Atlas's actions as anathema to our community, our values, and our belief that we should use knowledge for good. This is but a sampling of the attacks leveled at Atlas, but you get the idea. What unites these attacks, however, is that they were not scientifically based attempts to point out the flaws in his logic. Rather, all were rooted in raw emotion and fear. Why did this happen? And what does this say about the human condition, particularly about our elites? One truth I believe this episode lays bare is just how rare truly independent critical thinking is. Both Scott Atlas and his critics emerged from the same academic system. The key to success in this environment is the ability to memorize complex data and regurgitate them to your professors. Being a diligent and obedient student is rewarded while being a rebel who challenges the status quo does not. Critical thinking, the ability to move beyond what you've been taught, is rare. Even more so is the intellectual integrity to stick your neck out and go against your masters, whether they be professors senior to you, governing bodies, or the government itself. This lays bare the reality that more often than not, it is the people who hire the experts who set policy, not the experts themselves. This is the problem that Thomas Sowell outlines in How the Experts in the Financial Field Handled the Housing Crisis.
Listen to a list and then I'll ask you a question. Chairman of the Fed, Benjamin Bernanke, BA at Harvard, PhD at MIT, Professor of Economics at Princeton, Director of the National Economic Council, Lawrence Summers, undergraduate degree MIT, Doctor at Harvard, youngest tenured Professor of Economics and Harvard History, eventually President of Harvard, Treasury Secretary Timothy Geithner, A.B. Dartmouth, M.A. Johns Hopkins. He's the underperformer in the group. How did this group of intellectuals acquit themselves in handling the nation's economic crisis in 2008?
Well, first of all, they didn't handle it. The politicians handled it.
Ah.
And so even if you were to say that these guys really could have done a great job had they had the unbridled power and so forth, they don't have the unbridled power. One of the problems with experts is that experts are hired by other people. And so you never know what the expert would have done. In fact, there was an article in the Wall Street Journal some time back that what the policies that are being followed in Washington are the direct opposite of the policies that Summers advocated when he published before he got to Washington.
Right. Right.
So we should never assume that experts are just people they're supplying information to politicians who are trying to do good.
The nail that sticks up is hammered down. This Japanese proverb is true in most Asian cultures, but even more so in the ivory towers of academia. There is a reason that Albert Einstein won his Nobel Prize for his explanation of the photoelectric effect and not his groundbreaking work on relativity. Academia reinforces groupthink, but it goes deeper than that. This is what the Ash conformity test demonstrated in the 1950s.
The Ash experiment is one of psychology's oldest and most popular pieces of research. A volunteer is told that he's taking part in a visual perception test. What he doesn't know is that the other participants are actors, and he's the only person taking part in the real test, which is actually about group conformity.
Please begin. The experiment you will be taking part in today involves the perception of line length. Your task will be simply to look at the line here on the left and indicate which of the 3 lines on the right is equal to it in length. So, for example, if you think
The actors have been told to match the wrong lines. The volunteer will be monitored to see if he gives the correct answer or if he goes along with the opinion of the group and gives the wrong answer. In the first test, the correct answer is 2.
1. 1.
1.
Two.
1.
Once again, the correct answer is 2.
3.
3.
3.
3.
3.
The Ash experiment has been repeated many times, and the results have been supported again and again. We will conform to the group. Again, we're very social creatures. We're very much aware of what the people around us think. We want to be liked. We don't want to be seen to rock the boat, so we will go along with the group. Even if we don't believe what people are saying, we'll still go along.
1.
1.
1.
Group dynamics is one of the most powerful forces in human psychology.
1. 1.
The strongest instinct that all animals have, including humans, is the instinct to survive. Evolutionary speaking, one of the strongest ways to ensure survival is to be a part of a group. This is why group dynamics are so powerful in all aspects of human society. To be in a group is to survive, while to stand on your own is to invite death. This is why when society goes off the rails, most people, including those who know better, act like irrational apes rather than logical Mr. Spocks. Understanding this reality of human nature, what lessons can we learn so that the disaster of the COVID regime is never repeated? I don't have all the answers, but I do have some thoughts. One is the danger in concentrating so much power in the hands of a few. Central planning, it turns out, is just as disastrous for public health as it is for the economy. The second is the supreme importance of free speech, for when the establishment is literally leading society of a cliff, it is those few brave souls who are willing to stand up to the mob that most desperately need to be heard. In times of crisis, we need to heed the counsel of the Mr. Spocks of the world, not screeching apes. But that's what I think. What are your thoughts? Leave your comments below, share and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. If you're interested in learning more about some of the concepts in this video, such as Chesterton's fence, or in how to red pill your friends and family as to the reality of the COVID panic, get my free ebook, The Little Book of COVID Red Pills, at redpillcovid.com today.